Okay.
Right, let's say that now.
Thank you everyone, thanks for turning up. My name is Kuldip Sahota, and let's give a big welcome to the leader of the Labour Party and the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Germany, Corbyn!
Thank you, Telford, and thank you for giving me a stage when I've got to keep rotating. But I'll do my best. Could I first of all thank you all for coming along this afternoon. Sorry it's such a tough day with the weather. I hope you're coping. And can I say thank you to Kuldip for running a great campaign, and thank you to everyone who supported him in the election. We didn't quite make it, but I tell you what, we built something very strong that means whenever Theresa May finally decides that it's time for another election, we'll be there, we'll be ready, and we're going to win it. And I'm very proud of the election campaign that we fought all over the country. I'm very proud of the efforts that were put in by so many people that came and helped our campaign. We were doing an analysis the other day of where our funding came from for our election campaign. And you know what? 220,000 people contributed very small amounts of money to the Labour election campaign. That raised us several £million. That's because we're the party of the many, not the few, who wanted to support our campaign. And I'm very proud of that support that we got. And during the campaign, we were, as you well remember, written off by all the national media, written off by every broadsheet newspaper, and written off by every one of the commentariat who said, you know, this is a walk in the park for the Tories. And you know what? The result we got was an increase in the Labour vote of 3 million. The biggest increase in the Labour vote in any election since 1945. And I'm very proud of that achievement, very proud of the new MPs we got elected, and very proud of the effort put in by so many people to get that result that we did. However, the sadness is we didn't quite make it. We didn't win the election. We didn't get the majority that we need. What we put forward in the campaign was something transformational in British politics. It's to enrich the rich, individualise the rest, and impoverish the poorest, and say, well, if you're young, be prepared to pay for your own health service in the future, be prepared to pay for your post-school education in the future, be prepared to pay for your own pension in the future. And so we challenged that by offering a manifesto that was transformational. Transformational because we were saying, if you want the health service we need, and I'll come back to that, you want the education service we need, and I'll come back to that, then it's got to be paid for. And the best way of paying for that is by raising the tax on those that have had tax breaks and tax relief for the past 7 years by this government. And so we said we would raise corporation tax. We'd raise corporation tax to 26%. And that would help us to pay for the education and health that we need in this country. And we would alter capital gains tax and a number of other things. And we'd chase down those that think it's somehow or other clever to make a lot of money in this country. Yes, you're over there, thank you. He's trying to film me, it's all right. That is somehow or other it's clever to get away with not paying your tax and sticking it in a tax haven somewhere else. Well, I tell you what, it's not clever, it's not right, it's not fair, it's frankly wrong, and we will deal with that as a Labour government in the future. And what our campaign did was brought together a lot of people because of the ideas that we were offering and because of the excitement that was offered by that. And we now have the situation where, with the Tory government with no majority, I don't hear too much about strong and stable anymore. The only coalition of chaos is the one I look at when I look across the aisle in the House of Commons at a Tory party that lost seats in the election, that has found somehow or other £1 billion to buy out the DUP by putting some money into Northern Ireland, but somehow or other couldn't find money for capital investment anywhere else in England, Wales or Scotland, and at the same time lectures us that there isn't enough money available to lift the public sector pay cap and pay doctors, nurses, admin staff or anybody else properly within our health service, and no more money to increase teachers' pay who so desperately need it. The reality is, those working in the public sector in the National Health Service have had a 14% pay cut over the past 7 years. Those working in local government have also had a very large pay cut. And those working in the private sector are not doing that well either. 6 million people in Britain earning less than the living wage. And yesterday, Theresa May was lecturing us in Parliament that we couldn't afford wage rises, at the same time as there's tax breaks and tax giveaways going to the very richest within our society. It's time to challenge this nonsense. It's time to have an investment-led and growing economy, and you start by paying people properly, and you continue by investing in the future for all of us, not just for the few. And so, in our campaign, we put forward those ideas on a national investment bank, which would invest in all parts of Britain, on a national care service that would deal with the care crisis and the lottery of social care around the country, and of a national education service which would ensure there is real education from cradle to grave, because we value education for the sake of learning, the sake of the skills you develop, and the contribution that those educated, skilled people can make to our society. So I was very proud that we included there 30 hours preschool provision for all children. Very proud that we had taken what was I think, a very bold decision of saying we are prepared to raise taxation on the backs of the very richest in order to end college fees, bring back the educational maintenance allowance, and end university fees for all students, so students will not leave university with 55,000 in debt.
I don't mind STEM subjects, but arts, I don't want to pay for arts degrees with my tax money,
whenever
fam.
that election comes, that much I can promise you. What we've also said is that this is the time now for us to do two things. One is to reflect on the policies we've got and how we would develop them, because every single one of you here has knowledge, has ability, has ideas, has experience. All of that knowledge, ideas and experience can be shared amongst all of us. Can be shared amongst all of us because we do know something about the NHS, we do know something about education, we do know something about manufacturing industry, we do know something about how things can be done differently. So I've asked everyone in the Labour Party and the unions and anyone else who has got ideas, look at our manifesto, talk to us about it, send us your ideas about it, so that we can develop those policies. So come the election, whenever it is, it could be very soon, we're in a position to go into government and say, this is the national care service we want. This is the national education service we want. This is the environmental strategy we want. These are the ideas that have come about not just from a think tank of a few expert people, they've come about from the creative, popular creativity of everybody all over the country. That would give us a mandate to put those ideas into operation in government, and I'm determined that we'll be there and ready to go from day one at all the transformational ideas that we had in For the Many, Not the Few. What I would also say is, it's about campaigning. It's about ensuring people understand what we're challenging in this Tory government, what we're challenging in injustice and inequality in society. And the campaigning is very, very important. And so I've set myself a target of going to every single one of the 73 marginal constituencies we want to gain in the next general election. And I would have been to 40 of them by the time of the Labour Party conference in September. And you know what? Thousands of people are turning out to events all over the country because they want that debate, that discussion and those ideas. Even in Bournemouth, which has never had anything but a Tory MP since my granddad was a lad. We had a packed out public meeting last Saturday in Bournemouth, and it was so packed out we had to have an overflow meeting in the street outside. We had to open the windows to let people in, and then we tried to do a walkabout on the seafront, and that became completely random because 500 people joined in the walkabout, so we didn't actually walk anywhere. But we did have a good time chatting to each other about those ideas. So who says that radical ideas don't have an appeal? Who says that radical ideas aren't popular? Who says that social justice and the ideas behind it are not popular? Who says the idea that you can have a society that works for each other rather than the individual gets on with it on their own are not popular? I think we've shown the opposite is the case. And that's why I invite all of you to join in our campaign, gain more support for us, so that as soon as that election comes, we're absolutely ready and waiting to take the Tories on. So I tell you what, the day we got back to Parliament after it reopened, there was two sides of the House. One side was beaming, shouting, happy, ready to go for it, saying what they'd been doing in the election, challenging injustice in society. And there was another side that was quiet, complaining to each other, moaning, backbiting, backstabbing, abusing. Goodness knows what was going on. Do you know what? That was the Tories, the first lot with Labour. Because we gained that incredible level of support during the campaign, but we've got to take it a stage further. And of course there are huge issues that we face and huge issues we face in society. We all went through the EU referendum a year ago. We all know what the result of that was, and we as a party respect the result of that. And what we've done is said that we're determined to get tariff-free trade access to Europe, And I was in Brussels last Thursday making that point to the chief negotiator and to others there. And that we would guarantee the rights of EU citizens and we would not become a bargain basement, tax-cutting economy on the shores of Europe. We want to trade with Europe in the future. After all, half of our trade is with Europe, and a very large number of jobs here in Telford depend on that trade.
He's talking
with
about
Europe.
chatting to Barnier.
What did Theresa May
as
say? I
if
don't
he's
know why
going to be
I
the
keep thinking
leader
of Margaret
very,
Thatcher
very
when
soon.
the name Theresa
I
May
doubt it.
comes into my mind. I can't imagine what's going on there. What did she do? Instead of having that approach, said, well, she was having discussions with Donald Trump about a trade deal with the United States. Well, I just remind her of a couple of things. One is Donald Trump said, any trade the Americans do and any trade policy in the US is America first, the rest behind. Not much signs of any kind of equality of rights there. And secondly, he is trying to walk away from the Paris Climate Change Accord. Disgraceful and shocking. We would not ever walk away from it. Quite the opposite. We want it to be stronger. And we don't base the idea of trade deals with other countries by ignoring human rights abuses, by damaging working conditions on both sides of whatever agreement is reached, or reducing or damaging our standards in labour rights, in products, in consumer safety and consumer rights. What she wants, I suspect, is some kind of cosy deal with the United States which results in the reduction of rights of workers on both sides of the Atlantic and importation of GM crops and goodness knows what else from the United States. I want a trade policy that improves living standards on both sides, that respects human rights on both sides and ensures there is a growth of good quality consumer products and consumer rights on both sides of it. Surely the way forward in this world isn't a race to the bottom, it's a cooperation together to improve rights and opportunities for both parties that are a party to that agreement. And so we will continue with that strategy and working with social parties and trade unions all across Europe.
I don't think the government should have a monopoly on regulations.
But it's in this country we've got to face down what this Tory government is about. They came into office 7 years ago. They came into office and formed a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, and they governed for 5 years in coalition with the Liberal Democrats. Their first thing was to bring in austerity, which essentially was saying that public spending and public services, local government, health and education will pay the price of the excesses of the bankers in 2008, 2009. They said they would continue that austerity. That has meant frozen wages, that has meant cuts in school budgets, that has meant a cut in the housing programme in many parts of the country, it's meant underfunding of our public services all across. It's meant people with disabilities have gone through the most abominable indignities
are you going to
trying to
prosecute
survive,
any of these bankers?
and
I
it
doubt
has meant
it.
that many people have been driven into desperate and real poverty because of that. Is it really right, proper or necessary that in modern 21st century Britain 1 million people a year need to access a food bank in order to get enough to eat? Is it right or proper that so many parents facing the end of school term tomorrow, which should be a kind of happy time,
I'd rather
summer
give to
holidays
a food
coming,
bank
time to
than
spend with the children
the
and all the
government
rest
will
of it,
spend my money
face it with
on
a sense
bombing
of
people in the Middle
desperation.
East.
How are they going to feed those children during the school holiday because there's no more any free school meals for the 6 or 8 weeks that the school break is taking place? Is it right there are so many people sleeping rough on the streets of major towns and cities in this country? Are any of these things really not right or necessary? Or is it not? Is it not really a product of a failed economic strategy that has done so much to increase inequality and division in our society, that has done so much to bring about that poverty and lost opportunity? We could, should and must do things very, very differently in the future. That is what, for the many, not the few, we're trying to set out as the ideas for the future. I'm proud of what we set out there, but I'm proud that we're going to be able to carry it out when we get a little bit more support across the whole country. And all the signs are that support for Labour has increased since the election because people recognise what we're saying is sensible, realisable, realistic, and actually a truth. So they have a chance now, this government. We gave them a chance only a couple of days after Parliament resumed. We gave them the chance. We placed a motion before the House of Commons saying, quite simply, lift the public sector pay cap and allow public sector workers to negotiate decent and fair salaries and conditions. Don't impose 1% on them from above. We gave them that chance. We gave them that chance, and they didn't take it. They voted it down. We then gave them another chance a few days later with a summary of the points of our manifesto about investing for the future, not cutting as they've done in the past. Again, they voted that down. They have now got a problem ahead of them. They've got a problem because they're losing support. They've got a problem because they're deeply divided within their own party. They've got a problem because people have lost faith and trust in them to deliver any kind of social justice or decency within our society. I'm not pretending our options are going to be easy to carry out. I fully recognise they're not. But I tell you what, it's not easy trying to survive on ever lowering wages. It's not easy trying to survive when you're having difficulty feeding your children. It's not easy trying to survive as a young person and develop your life, your careers and your opportunities when you're saddled with a debt of £50,000 or £60,000 because you went to university. And so our option and our offer is something very, very different, as has been outlined and as I've outlined in what I've said earlier today. I want us to go forward as a party united, as a party that represents a huge diversity of people within our society, that represents that common strength of people coming together to achieve things, not blaming each other because things cannot be achieved. I think we've done a huge amount to bring that about. And as we campaign now, we're going to get that message out all across the country. We're going to get that message out that public ownership is back on the agenda for our railway industry. Because I'm fed up with the idea that we, the public, should invest a great deal of money in the railway system, and I welcome that. I'm a lover of railways. They're an incredible way of travelling about, and they need more investment in the future, yes. But I also think they should be publicly owned so that we all get the benefit from it, not those that are making money off the benefits of what we have invested. But there are other aspects of transport that have to be addressed. 1.5 billion people travel, 1.5 billion journeys are made by rail every year. More than that, more than 3 times that are made by bus. The bus services are not very good in most parts of the country. Some areas they're poor, other areas they're appalling, and in other areas they don't exist at all. And so we do need a comprehensive approach to public transport and a comprehensive approach to a decent bus service as well as rail service for the whole country. That we develop in opposition, so we've got the ideas of how we're going to bring it about. That is part of our inclusive offer to all parts of the country, be they rural or urban, of transport policies for the future. We've also said that we bring the water industry back into public ownership, because I'm fed up with the idea that the Thatcher-led privatisation of water in the 1980s has resulted in asset stripping of a large amount of water-owned land, has resulted in higher water charges, and has resulted in the profits being literally siphoned off and dropped somewhere in a tax haven somewhere else in the world. Sorry, it's a vital public service. We all need water. It should be publicly owned, publicly run, and publicly controlled, and it will be. And we say the same on the postal service, which again has been subject to the most massive asset stripping and rip-off, because that is what a lot of the privatisation was designed to do and achieve. So we put these ideas forward because we believe passionately in them, and we believe we'd get a better society as a result of it. We've got to this position because we're a large political party, because people have come together to join us, because they've come together because they're interested in doing things differently. 2 years ago, our membership was about 200,000. Now it is 575,000 members of the Labour Party, and that membership is going up. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that it's going up. And earlier today, I had a meeting with numbers of people from trade unions in Stoke-on-Trent. We spent time talking about industrial development and ideas for the future, where investment should take place, what training should be made available, how we can develop the creativity and the aspirations of every young person within our society. They're up for it, they're creative, they want to do it. It's that thirst that's in the Labour Party now to achieve this for the good of the entire society and become a force around the world which is a force for good, a force for human rights and a force for democracy. That's why I challenge the human rights record in Saudi Arabia, in Turkey and so many other places. So we do make that contribution to our society and our world. And you know what? All this is actually very exciting. All this is very unifying. And you know, when those terrible attacks took place during the election campaign in London Bridge, in Manchester, and in my own constituency in Finsbury Park, they were awful, they were vile, people died as a result of them, and the emergency services came to the rescue of everybody. The community response was amazing. In Manchester, as in London, people came together to say, actually, those people that caused this are no friends of any of us, are no friends of anybody, and they don't speak for any faith or any religion. They only speak for themselves. We stand together as communities to absolutely oppose that. And I was very proud of the people that came together. Just as much as when that fire occurred at Grenfell Tower. A towering inferno of people, many of whom were living in poverty in the richest borough in the whole of the United Kingdom. Isn't that a terrible message to give to the rest of the world, that somehow or other that terrible fire took place because of lack of regulation, lack of inspection, whatever's going to come out of the inquiry? And I've written to the Prime Minister to say we want an inquiry immediately into the causes of that fire. We want an inquiry immediately into the dangers that the residents of that tower block faced. But we also want a second inquiry into housing, housing provision, housing safety and housing opportunities all across the whole country. This is a turning point in our national consciousness. And I absolutely praise the ambulance workers, the paramedics, the police and the firefighters who went into that building and the dangers they faced and the risks they took in order to try and save life. And it's all very well praising them, which I do, and the government praised them as well. The difference between us is we would pay them properly, they would continue with the frozen wages of those people. And we would employ more of them. So it is about justice within our society. And when Matt Rack spoke, the General Secretary of the Fire Brigades Union, when he spoke at the Durham Miners' Gala, he said, look at those pictures, those firefighters with breathing apparatus going into that building. Do you know what? Every single one of those people was a trade unionist. No more attacks on people for being trade unionists. Recognise they are people, workers just like all of us. I want to conclude with this thought. Shropshire was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution in Coldbrook Dale. That's where all the basic industries of this country essentially come from. It's a place of huge technology and the growth that's come from that. And it's a place that needs more investment in the future, needs more secure work in the future, and needs to chase down the levels of poverty that exist in many parts, both in rural and in urban areas. We as a party represent people all across the county. We as a party represent people who have that aspiration for a common good and a common development, with all of us doing things together. So, I welcome the banner from Shrewsbury and Atcham. I welcome the banner from Telford. I welcome people from all across the county and the work they've done to get that Labour message out there. and welcome those that are campaigning for a health service that works for everybody all across the county and doesn't set up some kind of competition between Telford and Shrewsbury. And what I want to say is, we're going to be out there on all those doorsteps, we're going to be out there in all those towns and villages campaigning, and in Parliament we're going to be challenging this government day in, day out. They're going to get fed up with us, they're going to end up going away, they're going to end up having to have another election, and you know what? We're going to win that election and show what we're made of. Can I say thank you very, very much to all of you for coming here today. Thank you for your support, thank you for your friendship, and thank you for supporting each other to bring about the kind of world and kind of community that we want for all of ourselves. Thank you very much indeed.
So what I got from that was Corbyn wants to give everyone free stuff, but he wants other people to pay for it. And if those other people can't afford it, he wants to borrow money for future generations to pay for it. Yeah.